Well, hello there, ladies and gents. Great to see you again. Welcome back to Closing Arguments. Ryan Ruff, your moderator. But as always, I've got Jack Razumich of Razumich and Associates joining me here on the podcast. And today we are answering your questions. It's a mailbag episode. You know, Jack and his team get hit with a ton of questions over the course of their time operating in the criminal defense space. And today we thought we'd bring a lot of those hot topic or most popular questions directly to you guys on the podcast to, just kind of kill some of the myths, but also shed some light on maybe some things that you didn't necessarily realize with regard to seeking representation or any of the questions that typically pop up with regards to that. So before we get into the nitty gritty of it all, let's say hey to Jack. Jack, it's good to see you today. How you doing?
Hey Ryan, as always, it's good to be seen. Like you said a moment ago, this is a mailbag episode, so these questions have been things that we've either been asked directly face-to-face by clients or by client family members, or in some cases we've taken them off of social media. So we're not kidding when we say that we do read those. Some of the comments are a little bit impolite, but, it is the internet, so we just learn to roll with it. But, like, share, leave comments, all this stuff like that. Maybe your question will show up on a future mailbag episode.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head there. We are keeping an eye on things, folks, and we want to make sure we get some of those key pressing topics addressed, or, of course, in today's instance, questions. So, Jack, the first one to kind of lead off, not only is this a big question that I know you and your team get, but also we see it kind of pop up and influenced by courtroom dramas. There's the big crime that takes place, and the person goes and gets the big city attorney, the big wig, if you will, to help them defend them in what feels like this life or death case. So I guess the very first question that we fielded from you guys was, is it better to get the local attorney or that quote unquote big city or big wig attorney?
It's actually kind of a bit of a loaded question right now because of a variety of different factors. Indiana, as a lot of our listeners know, has 92 counties in it, and I have been the attorney of record in 75 of those 92 counties. We travel statewide. We're happy to do it. I will say that I have found a number of different things in traveling between those counties. There are only really a handful of counties where I think that there's been outright resentment from the prosecutor's office. And resentment probably isn't even the right word for it, just a little bit more pushback. Honestly, the judges sometimes will be a little bit rougher than the prosecutors will because jokes that I can make or comments that I can let slide with judges that I've been in front of for years and years get to be a little bit more prickly with judges that I haven't been in front of before. So an example that I can use pretty quickly is a couple weeks ago I was in Clay County, which is one of the counties towards the Illinois state line. It's a county I've been in before, but it's not a county that I've been in on a regular basis. And that client has a pending probation violation. And a lot of times what happens with probation violations is you probably are going to have to serve some time in a cell. Your probation's your suspended sentence. So if you violate that suspended sentence by committing another criminal fine, it's like kind of sticking your thumb in the court's eye on that. They don't take too kindly to that. So we're going to have to make an argument to the court. My client was not prepared to go into custody that day, and we were asking for continuance so he could kind of make sure that his affairs were all in order and things along those lines. And the judge kept pushing, well, why can't we do this today? And, my immediate comment was like, he wants to make sure that things are in order to take care of his family in case the court isn't feeling in a particularly merciful mood when we hear this argument. Here in Marion County, surrounding counties, judges that I've been in front of for a very long time, that would have gotten like a little bit of more playful banter back and forth about like, oh, well, the court's always merciful, Mr. Razumich. It did not go over very well with this judge. Like that judge reacted very negatively to that. So the benefit of having somebody local is that relationship does exist. There's a little bit more of that back and forth to where you don't have to worry about someone losing their patience on that. Now, the flip side to that, and one of the reasons why it's not as important as it used to be before, is there's a bit of an attorney shortage in the state of Indiana. It sounds like the weirdest thing in the world to say that we don't have enough attorneys right now. But there are big sections of this state where there aren't a lot of options for criminal defense attorneys unless you go outside of your market looking for them. I personally don't have a problem traveling. I enjoy I enjoy the travel. I enjoy seeing all the tiny places around the state. Some of the courthouses in the state are absolutely beautiful. The Jay County Courthouse, for example, is absolutely marvelous. But we go to those because there just isn't anyone else to go. There's Fayette County, which is one of the small counties in the southeastern corner of the state. They don't have enough attorneys locally to have a full-time public defender agency. Like, a lot of their public defenders come from outside of Fayette County because there just aren't enough attorneys there. So from that perspective, sometimes you don't have a choice but to get an attorney from outside of the county. Whether or not you want to make an argument that Indianapolis represents the big city hotshot, your mileage may vary on that depending on where you are in Indiana. But from my perspective, I think there's only been one or two counties that I've practiced in out of those 75 counties where not being local, in my opinion, had me treated differently than any other county. I don't think that the clients got treated any differently. Those counties, which I will demorally not discuss out of courtesy. Those counties did not exactly have great reputations for being friendly to anybody. So the idea that we were on the short end of that stick is not terribly surprising. I don't think they treated my client any worse than they treated any other defendant in that county simply because they had me. I think that I think they treat everyone terribly, and we just happen to be holding the bag that day.
Sure, and we'll keep that one in the back pocket. But Jack, no, that's a very interesting point, especially when you do have these cases that you're working on as the local attorney. You've got the institutional knowledge of the greater, state of Indiana and county laws even, but then also on top of that institutional knowledge of the judge and different experiences with them over the year. I can see how every now and then, obviously every situation is different, every case is different, but I can see how that might be able to lend itself to a, dare I say, more favorable outcome, or maybe more favorable circumstances perhaps. But yeah, it's makes sense.
And like I said, there have been counties where the judges were so excited to see a new person. Like I had one county where I got invited back to judges' chambers, and we sat and talked about baseball for about 30 minutes because he was just excited to have someone new there. It's like, why doesn't anyone ever come out here? It's like, well, there are no easy ways to get to your county, Your Honor. So
fair.
But yeah, I would say overwhelmingly, go with the attorney you think is going to do the best job. If you think an attorney from Indianapolis is going to do a good job for you on the other side of the state, and they're like me and willing to do the drive, by all means, go with that attorney. Don't refuse to hire someone because you think that not being one of the local boys is going to hurt you. And conversely, for the same reason, maybe sometimes be a little bit more leery of that local network. There are some counties that, again, because of the attorney shortage, there are some counties where most of the attorneys have done one stint or two stints as either prosecutors or public defenders. And there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. But there is, I think, some concern that might be justified about the idea that the same way that going out for drinks after work makes it easier to get things done, going out for drinks after work might make it a little bit more uncomfortable to rock the boat if it's a little bit more of a contentious issue.
Sure, it's a delicate dance.
Yeah, it is. But I would say the same thing I say to everybody. Hire the attorney that you think is going to do the best job. If it's us, and I always hope that it's us, hire us. We'll go anywhere. We've still got, what did I say?
You've got counties to check off. So
I've got 75. So yeah, that's 17 more counties. There's 17 more counties. Gosh, we're gonna get to Posey County. I'm gonna put billboards out there. It's like,
There you go.
murder, $1,000 to get this Posey County. I don't.
I love it.
I'd love to think the Supreme Court will give me like some sort of certificate if I get all 92, but I don't think.
I mean, 92 counties is no joke. But
Yeah.
well, hey Jack, let's move to the next question now, and this has got to be a big one that I know you guys are probably peppered with regularly, and that is, hey, why are other guys getting the same charges as me? Or I'm sorry, why are other guys with the same charges as me getting better plea agreements or better offers that are on the table? I mean, I would imagine you guys get hit with that a lot, but what say you to those classic questions?
We get that question. Nearly every case that we work on, that question will come up at some point in time. And
Sure, it's like, hey, I knew somebody that had a
Yeah.
similar situation, and their guy or gal got them this deal. Yeah, I can imagine that pops up all the time.
and the problem you run into with that is like it's very rarely that you have someone who has quite literally a direct carbon copy of the exact same charges.
Right.
It's one thing to say that two people have a DUI charge. That doesn't mean it's the same DUI charge. One person may have a DUI charge where they were pulled over for going 5 miles over the speed limit, and another guy may have a DUI charge where they were driving so fast they spun out and hit a guardrail. Like they're both DUI charges. They're both at the same level. They'd both be Class A misdemeanors, but the basic facts on them are completely different as well. And the other thing that I have found, because usually those come from clients who have not been able to make their bail for one reason or another. The most common reason for not making bail is if you were on probation for another offense that represents an automatic probation hold until the new cases are resolved. I know that this is going to be shocking to all of our listeners, but people who are in jail aren't always the most reliable communicators. So, if the guy in cell block B has the same charges as you, that's not necessarily correct. Like there could be a number of different factors that are in there. Like he may have less of a criminal history. The witnesses in his case may not be as cooperative, because that's another big thing that happens.
Or it's credible for that matter. Like their
Or it's
testimony
credible.
isn't as spot on as maybe the other. Yeah.
Yeah, so an example on that one is we had a slate of road rage cases a little bit south of us here in Indianapolis, down in the Greenwood, Johnson County area. There were a number of different road rage cases. I don't know if there was something in the water or if people just weren't wearing their tinfoil hats correctly or what have you, but we just had this big explosion of them for a while. And they kind of went in a variety of different directions based off of the specific facts. And one of them, we worked on two of them, and the outcomes on those were very heavily dependent on the credibility of the alleged victim in the case. In one case, the alleged victim, they blew off the first deposition. They had to be brought to the second deposition, escorted by the sheriff. I think we may have touched on that on a different myth episode. Like, you really do have to obey those subpoenas. They will send someone out to look for you if you just.
It's not just going away, folks.
Yeah. So, they had to be brought there, so they weren't particularly interested in cooperating with the process. And that was one of those things that we were able to say to the prosecutor, like, look, you can bring him in handcuffs in front of the jury if you have to, but that's not going to play really well for the credibility that he's a victim. Why don't we try to resolve this way? So that case we got resolved a little bit more favorably, because even though it was a road rage incident with pointing a handgun, that alleged victim clearly was not interested in participating. We had a different one, same county, same courtroom, same prosecutor. And with that case, the alleged victim showed up. They showed up to the deposition. They weren't wearing a full suit, but they were wearing a button-down shirt with a collar. They had a professional job. They came across very credibly, and because they were interested in, I don't say interested, they were participating. They may not have wanted to be there, but they understood, like, hey, I got to do this. This is what happened. They're talking just as clearly as we are right now. that made a huge difference in the way the prosecutor evaluated the case, and that made it much more difficult for us to get the exact same outcome. We literally today, and it frustrated me incredibly. We had a case that was one of 4 co-defendants that resolved by plea agreement day. We were the last ones to plead out. All other 3 co-defendants got slightly better plea agreements based off of the level of the offense. All 4 of them were charged with level 5 felonies. The 3 co-defendants all got level 6 felonies. My guy ended up with a level 5 felony. Like, we could not shake the state off of that. And I don't have a great explanation for why that is with this case. I will process that and be less frustrated about it later. But at the same time, our guy has less of a paper trail hanging over his head. Like, everyone that pled out, they have a longer period of court supervision. My guy, his resolution, he's going to be done with his supervision and just walk away from it. So, it depends on what your concept of a better or a different outcome is.
Sure.
But that's the situation you run into with that. We've actually asked on a couple of occasions, and I am always happy to be proven wrong. I never have made the argument that I am all-seeing and all-knowing. If someone is legitimately getting a better outcome with the exact same set of facts, the exact same circumstances, I want to know about it because I can make that argument. And we've asked people, I was like, okay, give me your Selly's name, or give me the name of this other guy that's got the better outcome for it. We'll look these things up. Yeah, like, we'll track that stuff down. Like, it's not that hard. As court officers, we have access to these court records. What I have found is, first off, the facts almost are always never identical. Like, there's usually a situation where either there's a problem with the accuser, or there's a problem with a different witness, or there's just a problem with the basic facts. The second thing we typically find is that the resolution isn't anywhere near as good as our client is telling us. Like, I had one DUI case. This was years ago. My client was on his second DUI, and he was in a county where it was just known that if you had a second DUI in this particular judge's courtroom, you were looking at 6 months in work release. That just happened to be the policy in this particular courtroom. And he was arguing that this other guy that he knew was also a repeat DUI offender, and he got a much better outcome on it. And we pulled his file. He actually had the name for us. We pulled the file on that one. And it turned out that he was actually a first-time DUI offender, not a repeat DUI offender. So the general rules apply. And there were a couple other facts, like the first guy, it was our client was a second-time DUI. It was a refusal, so there was the longer suspension and things to deal with that. The first guy, the other guy, it was his first offense, so that's big issue number one. And number two, he cooperated with a chemical test. He had to do a chemical blood draw because he had asthma. He couldn't blow, but he agreed and cooperated and didn't fight it. So again, like, those are big differences in how that happens. I don't have a great explanation for it. The location that you're in has a lot to do with it as well. Like I mean,
it's ever-changing variables. I mean, there's just a million variables going on in any of these situations. I know you keep using the DUI example, but guys, there's a lot more crimes that exist out there than DUI. So when you've got all of these different crimes, you've got different, witnesses, priors, all these things that you've got to think about. I mean, it's more seldom than often that somebody got a better plea agreement given the fact that the situation was the exact same. It's just typically not going to be the case, I would imagine. But
very, very rarely an A to A comparison on these things. There are always variables.
Sure. Jack, on to the next question. I chuckle as I'm going to ask this one. It's hey, look, if I'm going away to prison, then why am I giving you all this money? So hit me with your answer for that, because I know that's probably a tough response, given all the work that you guys put in to be able to fight. for your
Wow,
clients?
look at the time. I think we're out of time for this episode. um, Look, it's a valid question, and it's a hard one to answer. And there are situations where sometimes a person has done something that's dug the hole too deep for anyone to get him out of. As attorneys, we're not genies. We don't have magic wands. Hiring us, hiring any other private attorney is not going to magically make your consequences go away. Like if you rob a liquor store and you are very clearly on camera robbing the liquor store and there are 5 people identifying you as robbing the liquor store, nobody's getting you out of that. Like, that is a situation where it is literally just damage control. And sometimes that damage control does have value. It can be the difference between what we explain to people when we're talking about why they should hire our office over another office, or same with the public defender agency, is we tend to focus on the concept of our availability, our ability to communicate, and our ability to kind of answer your questions. I always tell people, when you're hiring an attorney, you're hiring someone to answer their questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I would rather answer your question than have you think, boy, I really wish I knew this beforehand and I didn't know that was something you were curious about. Public defenders, which is usually where that divide comes down. It usually comes down to the issue like, well, they're going to give me a free public defender, or I can pay someone. If I'm going to go to prison anyway, why would I pay money? I'll stick with a free public defender. Public defenders have limited resources. And I don't mean limited resources in the concept that they don't have government backing to be able to do just certain types of discovery more easily than me. Like, I'm really impressed by how easy and straightforward it is for them to subpoena records on a much quicker basis than I can sometimes, because they have the appropriate forms. They know the appropriate people to get that stuff in front of all the time. Where their limited resources is primarily on time. We file here in Marion County, here in Indianapolis, we file on average something in the area of around, gosh, I want to say something in the area of around like 43,000 criminal cases annually. A lot of those people end up with a public defender. So let's assume for the sake of argument that even that half of them end up with the public defender. You're now one of, what is that, 21,000 and change people that the public defender agency is working on.
Yeah.
Your case can't get individualized attention with those numbers. Like, it's literally just impossible. So the benefit of having a private attorney, and why, even if you're going to be going to prison, why sometimes having that private attorney is still a worthwhile investment, is you're going to have access to someone who can answer those questions and tell you why you're going to prison. Or they can tell you, okay, we've run down everything that we've got going on, everything that you've asked us for, every rock's been looked under, every bush has been shaken. We've done everything we can. Like, here's your analysis for why this is happening. What do you want to do? And the other benefit, too, is you can, because there are fewer people that a private attorney is going to be working on, we sometimes can get less time simply by being an annoyance. We have a little bit more of an ability to go in there and say, come on, just give us this, or like, just press them or prod them, or whine and beg, for lack of a better way of putting it, that a public defender just may not have that time. And when you kind of take those things into account, it comes down now to a situation of, okay, I could go to prison for 6 years, but I've paid this money to an attorney, and that attorney was able to get it down to 4 years. Like, 4 years in prison is still not fun. Don't get me wrong. But the difference between 4 years and that 2 year difference, like, what is that 2 years worth to you? If I could give you 2 years of your life, what is that worth to you? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
That's a really interesting way to frame it up that way. Not only surely that the cost of time in your life and time not being behind bars, but the other side is just purely the time itself that would be dedicated to your case. I mean, that's fascinating to hear, of the 40,000 and change that of suits that get filed, more than half. This is just our argument, or our point that we made here today. But gosh, if even half of them are going to public defense attorney, you're just not you're I mean you're a drop in the bucket. You're not getting individualized attention. I mean, so that's a great way to kind of break it down there, Jack, because I'm sure you guys get asked that question all the time when somebody's, I guess, at the beginning of that whole process. It's probably easier to say, well, I'm looking at this bill and I'm looking at free, and I like the sound of free. So I get how somebody's emotions around that conversation can change with a little education, a little conversation like this. So, yeah, yeah. Let me segue now into kind of I guess, the second part of that question, if you will, and which is, well, hold on, we lost. Why should I pay you if I lost? And while yes, it's a second part of that question, it is very much its own question. The result is over. You've now lost the case. Why should I pay you, Mr. Defense Attorney? Because you didn't win. I'm still going to jail.
That is always a very difficult situation that we have to deal with as attorneys. I'm very upfront about this. Like, I'm not selling you something tangible. I'm selling you my knowledge, my experience, my connections. Those are the things that you get when you hire an attorney. Like, there's nothing tangible. Like, I'm not giving you a car. I'm not giving you a house. I'm not even giving you a meal. Like, people understand paying for something that they can physically touch, physically hold. Those are things they understand. The way that I describe this sometimes is everyone eventually has to go to the doctor for one reason or another. They get sick. Like, there's a growth, under their armpit, or they have a persistent hacking cough, or their vision starts getting blurry, or something along those lines. Eventually, everyone's going to have to go to the doctor. And sometimes that doctor is going to give you news that you don't like. And that doctor will do everything they possibly can to cure you, or to fix you, or to make things better. And sometimes they just can't. You still have to pay the doctor. And it's the same concept here. We pride ourselves on providing a quality professional service to the people that ask us for help. And if we think that there's literally nothing that we can do for you, we tend to be very upfront about, like, hey, you can hire us, but we think you're throwing away your money for reasons X, Y, or Z. It's not our job to lie to you. But if we are working on your case, if we have accepted you as a client, if you have given us that trust, we're going to go out of our way to make sure that you're going to get the best possible outcome for it. And unfortunately, no matter what we do, no matter how hard we try, sometimes you will lose that trial. There's nothing that I or anyone else can do about that. Sometimes you will die on that operating table. There's nothing that the doctor did wrong. It's just basically a reality of, how these situations play out. Doesn't mean the doctor did anything wrong. Doesn't mean that we did anything wrong. But under both sets of circumstances, you agreed to a service. You agreed to a procedure. You kind of have to pay it. Those are the rules. It's not a situation of we're being jerks about it. We've done our best. If we did our job properly, we communicated to you the risks, the rewards, and the opportunities, just like an actual surgeon would.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, that's just how it plays out sometimes.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison there from the doctor's perspective. No, and I mean, yeah, I mean, given your response to the last question, Jack, talking about the value of hiring a private attorney versus going with a public defender, you're clearly making that conscientious decision to go with a private attorney, full well knowing that the bill comes with it. But at the same time, you're paying for that service, for that institutional knowledge, connections, expertise, everything you shared. Um, but I obviously can understand why somebody, you know, feels like they wanted to get something, they wanted to hold something, that win, in their hands, but it doesn't work that way sometimes. Jack, another question, just a personal question that I was curious of. So if for anybody out there that, let's say, they're accused of a crime, and maybe they have a familial connection, or a friend, a neighbor, someone that they know and have a personal relationship with, that works as a criminal defense attorney. In your experiences and whatnot, would you recommend that somebody goes with that, private defense that brings that pre-existing relationship, or do you think somebody might get a better defense if they're going in with a true third party, somebody they don't have a pre-existing relationship with? Anything like that?
Honestly, in my opinion, I think that you lose objectivity if it's someone you have a personal relationship with, and that doesn't mean that you're, honestly, you'd probably fight harder and you'd tilt it more windmills if it was someone that you knew personally. If one of my friends came up to me and said, "Hey, I was accused of, hitting a kid on a playground. I need defense on this." Yeah, I'm going to do everything I can. Like, this is someone I know. This is someone that I have a personal relationship with and I care about. The flip side of that is, do I lose my objectivity under those circumstances? Am I bringing in too much and knowing this person that I can't separate the person that I know from the person I'm supposed to be defending? I think that
Bias could probably creep in.
Yeah, I think that having a third party as an outside observer, I think a lot of times is better, just because you're not going to be swayed by those relationships. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that we don't care. Like, I have represented people that I've known personally in matters, and we made sure that they got a very good outcome. The vast majority of the people that I represent, I've never spoken to before they pick up the phone and call us. It doesn't mean that we don't care about them. It doesn't mean that we don't go out of our way to get them the best possible result and the best possible outcome. That's what we're here for. That is why we do this, is to make sure that you are being taken care of. But the people that I don't have that relationship with, it makes it a lot easier, in my opinion, to have harder discussions with them. Like, again, that whole situation of, like, we've looked over everything. We've ran down every lead, talked to every prospective witness. We can do damage control, but it's going to be damage control. There's still going to be damage that comes out of this. I think it's easier to have that conversation with someone that you don't have that pre-existing personal relationship with, because there are fewer built-in expectations. I think that a person that has a pre-existing relationship with an attorney, I think that they may have the impression that, okay, I've heard him work magic in other cases. He'll work magic with mine as well. That goes back to one of the earlier things we were talking about. Like, not every case is identical. So yeah, we may have worked magic in a similar case over here, but that might have different factors that we haven't been able to talk with you about because of client confidentiality or things along those lines. But that's kind of my thought on it. I'm sure that other attorneys have different opinions on it, and
No, the objectivity makes sense. It makes sense that you would want to have somebody that is kind of shooting straight when they come to that conversation, right, and trying to take emotion more so out of the equation here. Jack, I think that we're coming in here on the end of our conversation today. Is there any other pressing question, thought? Maybe it's one of those classic things you say as somebody's walking out the door after that first meeting. Anything at all that you find you're typically trying to educate any, let's say, new clients on that maybe are going through this process for the first time?
Yeah, and actually, it was a good thing that we had this topic today, because one of the last conversations that I had today really kind of was another thing that came up on this. Wasn't a comment on the internet. It was a comment that literally I got from a telephone call with a client. And the concept on that is the whole "why me" aspect of it. I don't know why you. Like, I mean, I could make the flippant argument, why you? Because, you broke the law, you did something that got yourself on the police radar. But there is no way that I or any other attorney will ever answer to your satisfaction why your case turned out the way that it did. Again, like we talked about a handful of different times, there are so many variables that go into this. The county that you're in, the judge that you're in front of, the prosecutor that you're dealing with, the specific facts of your case. If it goes to a jury, the jurors that show up that day. All those things have a huge impact on the outcome of your case and how things may shake out. There's a parable or an allegory or something. I always get those things screwed up. But there's a story about a person who gets bit by a snake, and you've got two options. You can either go to the doctor and you can get the poison sucked out, you can get an anti-venom, and you can kind of just move on with your life, being miserable about the fact that you got bit by a snake. Or you can spend all that time chasing the snake down, trying to convince the snake that you didn't deserve to be bit in the first place. It's kind of the same way. I can't tell you why you got charged with one thing over another. I can't tell you why your loved one had this outcome over that outcome. I can't tell you why the prosecutor seems to have it in for you personally. They probably don't. Again, much like the public defender, the prosecutor has 100% of the case. It's like, you really have to do something to get on the prosecutor's radar, and don't think that you can't. I've had clients do it. I don't recommend it. But I don't know why the prosecutor seems to have it out for you specifically. Like, there are 1,001 different ways that can go. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, you just have to accept it and move on. Like, I can't change the past. I can only do what I can to protect your future. And part of that is just basically telling clients, like, you got to let this go. That's all there is to it. You can't hold on to it. You can't you can't spend the entire time just upset. I mean, it's upsetting. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't like it either. I wouldn't do this if I didn't care about the people that we worked with. But I don't have those answers. If I had those answers, I wouldn't be a lawyer.
Yeah, and at the same time, if somebody is able to kind of take that step out of that initial wave of emotion and whatnot, and funnel some of that energy and effort into providing you and your team with the facts, memories, documentation, relationships, any of the information that you guys need to go compile a great case on their behalf, that's time well spent for them. That's where you want to be. It's just so much easier said than done when you're in that moment. But Jack, look, this has been an episode by and for our audience. A lot of good stuff here today, answering a lot of their questions. Jack, as I always ask you, for anybody out there that could use somebody in their corner, working for them, fighting for them, what would be the best way somebody can reach out to your team and just start the dialogue?
Telephone call is always still the best way of doing it. We are adding more ways to contact our office via online forms and chatbots, because I understand that anyone younger than me is really adamant about not using the telephone for actually calling people anymore. But the telephone number is still the best way of reaching us. That number is 317-983-5333. That number's monitored by real live human beings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're not going to get an AI computer or anything like that when you call our office. You get actual live human beings who will speak with you. Those people will get you onto a calendar for a free case evaluation. Those case evaluations are always free. If it's something that we can't help you with, we'll tell you that we can't help you with. If it's something we can help you with, we'll tell you how we can help you. But all that starts with a telephone call. We can't help you until you call us. So that's always the first step.
Fantastic. Well, folks, we very much appreciate your time for tuning in with us today. And as you obviously saw, today's episode was rooted in conversation points that you guys wanted to hear us talk about, and siphoning some of those comments that you guys have left us, questions that we've received over the course of time together. So please keep chiming in, leaving those comments, reviews, email, questions, the whole 9 yards. We're keeping an eye on these things, and we want to make sure we continue to be as engaging as we possibly can with you guys as we move forward. So we appreciate you, and thank you, of course, for tuning in today. Jack, as always, I know you've got a client case to work on, so I'll let you get back to your day, but thanks again for stopping by.
Never stops.
Of course. Well, look, folks, once again, thanks to everybody who tuned in today. Make sure to subscribe, to like the comment, and be sure to share with a friend in case that, you learned a thing or two and you think they could as well from this show. But look, for Jack, I'm Ryan. We're going to go and say so long now, but we appreciate everybody stopping by and being with us today on Closing Arguments.